Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. If you have a legal question, you can call in and ask it, 540-0580. Okay, well, let's talk about the elephant in the room here. Obviously, I have undertaken representation in the Sandusky case in the Penn State matter. And, well, let's just say the reaction's been mixed. I've had a lot of you who listen regularly to this show send me congratulations and kudos. I've had a lot of people tell me, how in heck can you represent somebody like that? And, of course, if you've been following the national media, you've seen how, well, I got beat up pretty good for a theory I, quote, floated, end quote, if you believe the press. But I was asked a question, and the question was, hey, could you think of a reason or a circumstance, or under any circumstance, could you think of a reason why an adult male would be in the shower with a youth? And I gave a possible hypothetical answer. That possible hypothetical answer was floated as if it was part of the Sandusky defense, and that turned into a 24-hour news cycle, which culminated in my all-time dream of being mentioned on the Rush Limbaugh show, except a little bit tongue-in-cheek. So those of you who listen to Rush probably heard it. Anyhow, what I wanted to get out there and say to you guys is, in response to people who ask, how could I represent anybody? The answer is, in this country, you're entitled to a defense. We have to defend the Constitution from the ground up, and everybody is presumed innocent, no matter what the allegation. And that's one of the issues I had in this case. When I was on Durgan the other day, I got beat up a little bit by folks who said, how can you represent somebody who did this? And I'm saying, you have the evidence? Bring it forth, because if you do, we want to see it. But the reality is, until we get into court and see what the government actually has, we don't know if anybody's guilty of anything. In fact, these rushes to judgment were what the king used to depend upon, what the king used to thrive upon, which is the king could issue a decree that so-and-so did such and such, and the masses would run to get the rope together and lynch the person or draw and quarter them based solely on an allegation. And so remember that in this society and in a free society, unlike Iran or any of the other dictatorships of the world or countries that don't value freedom, we start from the proposition that everybody is innocent until proven guilty, and we don't give the government the power of simply making an allegation and deciding that the person is guilty based on the allegation. So to the extent that anybody's done that in this case, shame on you. Wait and let the court process go forward, and let's make sure that every litigant in the case, the Commonwealth included, has a vigorous representation in the court, and let the jury decide. And that's my position. I'm sticking to it. So here's our rules for the show going forward. Obviously, this case isn't going away anytime soon. So while I'm representing the matter, I will, from time to time, give you updates here on the air, but I'm generally not going to take questions on it. Instead, I'm going to expect that the questions would be people's legal problems, because that's what we're here to do. Remember, I come on 2 hours every week, give up my Saturday afternoons to try to answer legal questions here for you folks. So 540-0580, whatever you want to talk about. If you have a divorce, custody, property dispute, child support, want to talk about, should your child support be higher or lower, 540-0580. Come on board. We'll talk with you here live on the air and answer your legal questions. And, of course, as you know, you can go to romingerlaw.com. Also, if you go to weekendappointment.com, you can sign up for our free will kit. I just did a couple of those yesterday, believe it or not, as busy as I've been. And I'll share one other funny story with you. Because after you've been beat up in the national media for a while, you get a little apprehensive. And, my friends were teasing me about having been on Anderson Cooper and Piers Morgan. And, all you want to be is on TV. Well, I pulled into the Sheets this morning in Carlisle, and the court TV truck was in there getting gas, apparently. And I snuck around the side and snuck into the Sheets and got my soda and snuck back out because I was scared to death that Court TV was going to want to question me or talk to me. So it gets a little jarring after a while. But if you have legal questions you want to talk about, 540-0580, and we'll answer them. I mean, if you're personal injury, whatever you want to talk about. Supreme Court, of course, has taken up health care. We're going to keep monitoring that. We don't expect to see an answer until springtime sometime, and we'll know have an answer by July. But obviously, I'll be following that. And remember, I'm sort of staking out my position that there's a good chance that the justices could say that the necessary and proper clause of the Constitution gives the power to Congress to do this, to go ahead and mandate health care. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not Congress is given that power by the Supreme Court. The slippery slope argument is then if they can do that, then they can pretty much affect commerce by forcing the purchase of anything. And some of the critics have said that what we'll see then is laws that require you to purchase anything and everything from, well, the auto industry is lagging, so instead of doing a bailout this time, we're going to require a person with a car more than X number of years old to trade it in and buy a new one. Or we're going to require all people to buy an airline ticket and bail the airlines out this time. And that's a pretty good argument against it. I think it's enough of a fundamental issue that the court may have to back off the necessary and proper jurisprudence that it's used in the past. And if it does that, I wouldn't be surprised. 540-0580 is the talk line number. Again, if you want to have a conversation, you want to talk about anything, jump on. We'll talk about child custody. We'll talk about personal injury. Just settled one with one of the local cities for a 1983 action. One of the attorneys in our office, Vinny, did. I think he talked about that last week. If you have a use of force case, of course, we can always talk about those as well. What else I want to let you guys know? I want to make sure you are checking out the updates on RomingerLaw.com. Of course, we have what is a preliminary hearing up there. So if you've wondered what a preliminary hearing is or what you need to do when you are charged with a crime, you can read there a little bit about how that works and what you should be thinking about. I get very angry at people who either take or waive a preliminary hearing without the advice of counsel. So read that on RomingerLaw.com. I think you'll find it very useful. Paul, you're on the air. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on?
Carl, I'm sitting in a house that's tied to a life estate.
Okay.
I paid for the house. It was in my name. I granted it for life to my parents. And I never gave a thought to how I was going to get it back. I looked at the document. It doesn't actually say, and it automatically reverts to me when neither of them is no longer living. What will I do?
Well, I'm thinking this. I mean, did you actually write a deed granting them a life estate?
Yes.
Okay. Well, and a deed, you say that they can stay there all their life.
Well, I'm in it.
Right.
But it's their property. I can't sell it without their permission or without a revocation
of the life estate. But if you just granted them a life estate, then all you've given them is tenancy for their life, and by default, you're the remainder man. Meaning, if I was writing the deed, I would have spelled that out in there somewhere just to be clear. But by default, since you only granted them a life estate, you then retain the remainder man interest, or your estate, or if you predecease them, then your estate would be the remainder man.
So at the event that I have the death certificates, I just go to the courthouse and present this and ask them to name it back to me, or it just kind of...
It just kind of happens. The next time you go to pass title, we would want to see proof of their death, etc. However, there are some things you could do in the meantime. You could do a quiet title action. There may be also some other paperwork we could file. The general idea being is just to make it simpler, but long and short of it, if I was doing the title on it, I would want to see proof of those individuals' death, meaning your parents, and then I would be satisfied you could pass good title.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
All right. And the lesson in that is be careful when you're writing life estates out to people because particularly when you give somebody a life estate, you can't do anything with the property and your interest is severed, at least for purposes of doing anything in the immediacy, and until they sign off. So we run into a lot of these problems where there's a life estate in a parent who's now in a nursing home. The house really should be sold, or the kid wants to do something with it or borrow money against it. Mom or dad's not realistically getting out of the nursing home, but they have a life estate interest, and then they survive 5 or 7 more years, just sort of tying everybody up. So life estates can be tricky. 540-0580. I want to get back from the break. We'll keep taking your legal questions. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here. Hey, R.J. Harris, you're out at Lawrence Chevrolet?
I am indeed, Mr. Rominger, and we're listening to you out here. So thank you. And I'm not only at Lawrence Chevrolet on the Carlisle Pike, I'm at their brand new facility. They've been here forever, but the truth is completely remodeled. It is absolutely gorgeous and stands out in that sky, and now the big flag is up. 15 by 25, so the stars and stripes are flowing. And Rhonda Lawrence with me, he gave me a tour. This place is amazing. A lot of creature comforts for your customers.
We certainly tried to. We created a customer lounge that is very customer-friendly. One of the things we're proud of, we have a board that almost like an arrival and departure board that you'd see at the airport. You can watch your last name move up the board as your vehicle progresses in service and see the status of it, whether you're sitting here or logging into your smartphone or from your computer at work.
Yeah, and you have the Wi-Fi and the big screens. I mean, it really is a neat place.
Yep, we sure are trying to make it as customer-friendly as possible.
All right, same with taking delivery. I notice you now take delivery indoors, so the car A to Z, and no matter what kind of weather.
Doesn't matter, snow, sleet, rain, or 90 degrees. You're in comfort and learning all about your vehicle.
Love it. Place looks good. Okay, come on by and see us. We have some Common Sense T-shirts left, and we'd love to give you one, WHP license plates. And, of course, we're listening to Carl Rominger here on WHP 580. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, RJ. 540-0580, Carl Rominger here. Maybe I'll go out there and look at the Chevy Tahoes. I think that would be a good car for me, Art. I'm not positive, but I think it would be. All right, you got a legal question. You want to get it answered here on the air, 540-0580. Whatever you guys want to talk about. You want to talk about a little child support? You want to talk about, divorces? Those are my favorite. You know, those go on and on and on. Actually, we just had one where we won a exclusive use of the marital residence. Got the old hubby kicked out. Also got a dissipation of assets and an order requiring return of property, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, when people say, oh, you know, they don't always grant exclusive use of the marital property, that's true. But they're not as hard to win, I think, as people realize, because I think courts sometimes like to separate the parties and get them both out of the marital home in the middle of a divorce, because there's not a lot of good things that can come from that. If you think about it, even when everybody sits down and eats dinner together, it's only a matter of time till the recriminations fly. Somebody starts to discuss possible resolutions, and those things are never good left to the parties themselves. So exclusive use of marital residence is a motion that you can use in a divorce. So if you're stuck in a house together, now I can think of another case, however, where I have somebody stuck in a house with somebody else, and it's just miserable, but the court didn't didn't grant it, and now they're just steeping in their misery. So those are the kinds of cases where somebody's got to get a plan and get out of the house. And, of course, sometimes the fight is who's going to keep the house or who's not going to keep the house. Let's see. All right. Jeff, you're on the air. Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just checking to see, wife and I are split up. Been 3 years. Looking to, of course, pull the trigger on the big D, but neither one of us are in a position from a financial standpoint to be able to do that. And I was wondering if there's a simple process. I think we'd both be in agreement to do it that way. That's very low cost or next to no cost.
If you're in agreement, in complete agreement, and there's nothing exotic that needs to be taken care of. Excuse me for a second. Actually, I remember there was a case out in California a few years ago where there was a couple and they were billionaires, and they allegedly had an agreement and were going to, just divvy everything up, and then it fell apart, and probably $100 million in legal fees later, they still hadn't split everything up. But my little joke there is you got to be in agreement. The less there is, the easier there is to be in agreement, I think. Sometimes just fighting over debt can be a problem. But if you are in agreement, what we would usually do is have one of you as the party. The other person would consent to have the divorce filed in one of the far-flung counties where the filing fee is very inexpensive. So instead of, for instance, paying a $350 fee at the Cumberland County Courthouse, you'd pay maybe a $70 fee in one of the far-flung counties. We do the paperwork, and you can get divorced for $500 or thereabouts.
Okay.
So that's about as cheap as it gets. There are ones in the newspaper, too, I see. But again, it's really tricky if there's going to be any kind of dust-up or fight, because you really don't want to be driving 2.5 hours to go to a courthouse if you do have a breakdown in the agreement.
Right. Well, there's really nothing to divide, the other question that I have is, and this is where it gets a little sticky, both my mom and my aunt live in the Midwest and have fairly large farms that will eventually someday be mine, I'm sure. And I'm just curious, if we stay separated and don't get divorced, is that something that could then in turn become hers?
Anytime you're separated and you haven't formally filed a divorce action, okay?
Right.
There's a danger that anything either of you do could still become construed to be marital property. Now, later a judge will determine the date of separation, and things acquired post-marriage will be considered non-marital property or post-separation. But the easiest and cleanest way to create a separation date or a divorce date is to file the paperwork, okay? Second of all, any asset or thing that you took from the marriage that somehow turned into additional property, there's always a claim that if you took a marital asset and turned it into something else, that it still has some marital nature to it. But anything that's fully earned yourself or comes to you, or an inheritance or a gift, which usually wouldn't be marital property anyhow, which comes to you after separation, remains yours or remains as non-marital property, but it's still relevant in any dissolution down the road for purposes of splitting up the marital property. So long and short of it is, I still counsel people, if you're going to separate, you might as well pull the trigger so you have that magic document out there, set the date. Imagine you win the lottery, you know. All of a sudden,
Right.
You're going to have a memory that you separated on one date, and your wife's going to have a memory that you guys weren't separated until after that date.
Right. Another question. Shoot, I just lost her. The whole there's no real. I guess the question is there's no legal separation or anything like that in Pennsylvania that you automatically are considered to be divorced after a certain period of time?
We don't have anything like that. No, we don't have a legal separation. We don't have an automatic divorce statute of any such nature. But, you know, if you file a simple divorce complaint, it'll sit at the courthouse for up to 2 years without activity on it. So you could at least file the divorce complaint and maybe just not prosecute it forward, although I wouldn't recommend that.
So what does that mean exactly?
Well, that just means you've filed a divorce complaint, so you've made it clear to the public, you made it part of the public record that you're intending and in the process of getting divorced.
Right. And is that just a simple document, or is that all?
Well, it's a complaint. You got to, it's a complaint. It has to be drafted by an attorney, or you could do it yourself, but you have to make sure you follow all the rules for the courthouse where you're filing it.
Okay.
But my thought on the matter, Jeff, is scrape up $500 between the two of you and get divorced.
Yeah.
All right, brother.
That's where I'm at. Thanks.
540-0580, Mr. X.
Hey, Art. Hey, Carl. How are you?
Good.
I have a question relative to judgment recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a young lady who's was hurt in a car accident. I referred her to your office, and I don't know if she followed through on that or not. But in fact, I think she did not. And she's got about $10,000 in a judgment that was awarded to her. But due to circumstances, she's moving out of state, and I wanted to purchase her judgment.
Okay.
Can your office assist in securing that judgment?
Yeah, we can assign it to you.
Okay. And how good are you guys at recovering judgments?
How good? Well, you know what? That's a funny question. The answer is we're only as good as the person we're recovering it from. And what I mean by that is, if you bring me a judgment and I've got to recover it from, some house that's been condemned in York County or something, maybe we'll recover something. On the other hand, if we're going to execute the judgment against a person who's married and it's only against one of the parties, again, we might have problems finding non-marital assets. But we know what to do to execute it.
Okay, what would the fee for something like that be?
Well, we talk about it off the air, but the general gist of it is a percentage of what we recover, and it's usually a pretty good nip, only because a lot of times there's so many ways for a judgment debtor to escape paying, including bankruptcy, ultimately.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to make the offer to her profitable enough for me, so I could still.
Yeah, I usually tell people you figure that most collections attorneys charge 50%. You should use that as your basis.
All right.
All right.
Okay. I'll let you go. I appreciate it, and thank you, my friend. Are you still offering that special free will to anybody who stops by your office?
Yeah, if you just go to weekendappointment.com, you can fill out the kit. That's our only little caveat. You got to fill out that little sheet from Weekend Appointment, and then it's free.
Okay, keep up the good work. And by the way, I'm watching your Sandusky movement there as far as you becoming part of that team. It's interesting chess play.
Yeah, and, you know, as I said, I'm not going to get too bogged down on the Sandusky stuff during this show, but I got to tell you, you know, my only goal in the case is to see the justice is served and to see that I can do the best job that I can. And you know what? I've never cared about the outcome of any particular case as long as I've done my job right. But we do like to win when we can, and we've done well over the years in criminal defense pieces. But it's the kind of case where the only thing that upsets me about it is the rush to judgment that's occurred with the public because, yeah, you know, and I never get it because the same people that listen to this radio station who are more my political stripe, the conservative style, that's a little more my stripe, libertarian more so maybe even than conservative, but they don't trust the government to issue health care. They don't trust the government to administrate anything. But for some reason, if the government hands them a document that says somebody did something, they're ready to execute them. And I'm like, how come you hate the government so much, except when they want you to hate somebody else, and then you love them so much? Anyhow, I go nutty.
No, I happen to agree with you. What do you think about the new thing that violates posse comitatus?
With the use of the armed forces here?
Yeah, roger that.
Yeah. Again, you know, it's real easy for people to want the government to solve all their problems. But you can't distrust the government on everything and then trust them with power. And that's the big issue. The more power the government has and the more automatic power they have and the more automatic credibility they're given, the more dangerous our society becomes.
Absolutely, especially with these new, I forget the name of the specific act. It's basically Patriot Act Part 2 on steroids. So I don't know the name of the thing, but it's the one that was just released, and it's the ability to retain a suspect without trial, without right of counsel, indefinitely. And on the first paragraph or so, they say it's not the U.S. citizens, but towards the conclusion of the document, it says, but if we deem a U.S. citizen falls in that category, tough luck, he goes away.
Right, and so it's kind of like, well, it's the old catch-22. You know, we're not going to do this to U.S. citizens, but if we don't think you're a U.S. citizen, by the way, you don't get a chance to prove you're a U.S. citizen.
Yeah. Okay, so it'd be interesting to hear some additional thoughts on that if you want to get on that sometime today or sometime.
Yeah, you know what? Probably that's something for a couple weeks to come because I'd like to spend some time studying it.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Thank you for the call.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
540-0580. We'll be back after the break. Oh, it's Christmas time. I probably will be live, was that Christmas Day, right?
Christmas Eve.
Is Christmas Day a Saturday?
Christmas Day Sunday.
Sunday, oh, Saturday afternoon. Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't know if I'll be live Christmas Eve yet or not. That's next Saturday. I better make up my mind, huh? Yeah, Art's shaking his head. 540-0580. Who knows? With that bumper music, we won't be able to rerun this show very often, I don't think. Jay, you're on the air.
Hi, Carl. I had a stretch for something hypothetical this week. And it actually does have to do a little bit with football. I was just, the news of the week, and I'm not a big football fan that much, or Pitt. The Pitt coach, apparently, who had been there a year, asked for permission to talk to another school. When they refused, he just went ahead and signed with this other school anyway. So it leads me to wonder about some of these contracts that are written and all the rules they have against the kids. Obviously, they have some openings in these contracts that allow coaches to just leave them. But I got a feeling, why would he ask them for permission to talk to another school? So what I'd love to see some of these contracts for ethical reasons. These big name coaches just kind of clapped into those contracts.
Yeah, well, what they do, that's a negotiation term. I've actually seen it before in a business contract for somebody who was having us review it for a position where they would be kind of an executive, and they had contractually agreed to give their employer notice if they were talking to somebody else. And the purpose of that is just so that the employee doesn't leave blindly. Now, I can imagine maybe a contract would include a provision that says, you shall not leave us and have a penalty if you leave early, or at least maybe some kind of...
Even these schools jumping from one conference to another, there seems to be no control, no national control of anything, and everything is based on money anymore.
Let me bring you back to... let me give you an example where a consumer benefits from the same sort of shenanigans and the same, and also not benefits, but is restrained the same way. Similarly, so we saw with cell phones for a long time. If you sign a 2-year contract and you want to get out early, there's a $200 penalty.
Mm-hmm.
And then Verizon or somebody would say, okay, well, if you have an AT&T penalty you have to pay, when you sign with us, we'll give you $200 upon proof that you had to pay the penalty. In other words, the new guy. So this sometimes is in the contracts. If you leave early, you're going to lose deferred compensation in the amount of $1 million. So your new football team or your new employer or somebody says, oh, well, if you come over here, here's your new pay package. Oh, yeah, by the way, we'll compensate you for your penalty from your other package. So sometimes these restraints, there are restraints in the contract in the form of deferred compensation or penalties. Usually deferred compensation, because usually once you paid somebody, you can't disgorge it.
Unions often negotiate contracts. They have contracts. They don't have contracts and then contracts for stars, like you see in the theatrical world, or if you see in the entertainment world, or you see it in sports. And then they talk about standard NFL contracts or standard NBA contracts, which are merely minimums. These guys aren't real. I can't think. To me, these guys aren't union people, and they're not. They're really management.
The interesting thing, though, I know what you're saying is that, but they're free to sign individual contracts, and the football teams, the organizations, the conferences are free to create whatever contract they want. But you're right. I mean, entertainment and sports is star driven. And as a result, they get special status. I mean, Howard Stern, for instance, comes to mind. The amount of money that Sirius satellite radio paid him to come over originally was $500 million over 5 years.
Okay, and they do that because they figure they can make money off him. Now, I don't believe you make money off of coaches, but again, I'm really not here, and there's no legal. I kind of understand it legally. I'm just getting on the air to kind of complain about guys who have no ethics. And wamp up ethics and all this other stuff, and they push it on the kids. When for instance, Tim Tebow, when I was reading about his religious bent, when he was in college, I guess he had something on his eyelids, and the quote, they said, oh, you can't do that. But they don't go around telling the coaches this. I'm just tired of grown people being hypocritical and expecting all this stuff out of these kids and promising them, and then just going out and hitting a shiv in their back, which is, I guess they don't think of it that way, but...
Well, the short answer, there's been some criticism of the coaches' pay scales, and of course this isn't sports radio, so I'm not the expert on this stuff, but I've seen a study that shows that coaches at the college level have their salary increases have far outstripped inflation for many, many years.
And so have CEOs.
To the point that they've so have CEOs.
We're not talking Division III. We're not talking about Millersville, where I went. We're talking about these big programs.
Well, my alma mater, Allegheny, was Division III national champions the year before I got there, and they've still held pretty good over the years.
I couldn't think of anything better to call about, so that was kind of bugging me a little bit.
Oh, Jay, I appreciate it.
Okay.
I'll take it up with Jim Rome the next time he's making fun of me on the air.
I've called some of the sports people on the paper, and and that's another thing. Some of these sports calling, all they are, they're not intelligent talk. They're they're kind of fraternity boy around the bar. Doesn't she have great legs? Kind of, that's what it's become.
I've never said that, so. All right, my friend, I'm going to let you go.
Bye.
Oh, boy. Yeah, Jim Rome, have me on. We'll talk about sports salaries, and then you can beat me up about other things. 540-0580. Mike, you're on the air.
Yes, hello, Carl.
Yes.
Mike calling, and I'm calling about a judgment on a demand note that I had signed over 3 years ago. The man wanted to save his business and asked me if I could help. I'm 68 years old. I still work and do the administration for my nephew and I that have a little field service business. And I've been able to save, and I understand what a cash flow problem is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, I can do it. We signed the agreement and got along great. We still have not argued to speak of. However, he won't call me about it. The $10,000 he owes. However, a little over a year ago, he did pay the interest after I had sent him a letter from his business account.
Mm-hmm.
So he does owe me. I went and found out who owns his house, and I can't put any lien on it. It's in his wife's and his name, and another party owns most of it for a mortgage. However, I did get the judgment. The magistrate signed it, and it was just posted in Lancaster County as in their civil court. So,
right.
My understanding is that he won't get any line of credit just because Lancaster County has it on their site.
It will show. It will show as a judgment against him. I mean, I guess any creditor could potentially loan him money, but it's going to be a big flag.
Yeah, but if they're from Pittsburgh, would they know to look at Lancaster County?
Oh, it gets reported out to the Credit Reporting Bureau. So if you have a judgment against you, it shows on your credit report.
Oh, okay. And my next step is, it's been galling me for the last year. I sent him quarterly reminders. What should have been a simple transaction of faith, I gave him 2 years and had to remind him. And I had a library full of papers that I've saved. It's on my computer also. And I'll probably end up maybe calling your firm, but he owes it, but he's not going to pay it. And I don't think I can touch any of his property because it's in his wife and his name, or his equipment is at his mother's.
And one of the things that I'm going to give you some advice going forward, of course, never going backward, but seriously, make sure if you ever get in business with somebody again, loan money or give them equipment or whatever, get the spouse to sign.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That goes a long ways towards increasing the collectability. You know, somebody earlier asked me, could I collect a judgment? You know, how good are we at collecting judgments? And I said, only as good as the person we're collecting it from, meaning is there's assets to reach.
Right.
And marriage in Pennsylvania is a big block unless you have the husband and wife.
Exactly. She is the business manager for his business, but she's also running a horse farm, and all their money is going to it. And he won't respond to me, and she has wrote me off as such.
Do you know what happens with horses? You put a lot of money into them, and you know what you get out of them, right?
Right, yeah. So I guess I'm sitting on this, and I just thought if I can do a writ of execution with a precipice, is what I've been told.
Yep.
But there again, what do I go to claim?
Well, and that's the sheriff goes out to their property and rounds it all up, and then the spousal exemption comes into play, and then if there are any third parties or secured creditors hold any of it, that becomes a problem. But yeah, I mean, you could try it. You could absolutely try to write of execution.
I see, and
sometimes that gets people annoyed enough to pay too. Put you on the top of their priority list.
Okay.
You can also do a writ of execution against bank accounts too, but that's got to know where the bank is and what account, et cetera, et cetera.
And his equipment is at his mother's, but his mother might have signed the articles of his incorporation.
Yeah, but even if the equipment's at his mother's, if it's not her equipment and it belongs to him, you may still be able to writ it. If it belongs to him and his wife, then you got a problem.
Okay.
Because the location of the materials isn't really as important as who possesses them. So you may be able to specifically go after those materials. I got to go to break here. Thanks,
Very
Mike.
good. Well, thank you kindly.
Not a problem. Thank you for calling in. 540-0580. Carl Rominger answering your legal questions here on WHP 580. See you after the break.
Attorney Carl Rominger joins me now from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks very much for joining us. This has gotten a lot of attention, obviously. You've issued a statement earlier saying that the media accounts of your comments about showering with young boys were, quote, somewhat exaggerated. What do you mean? How were they exaggerated?
Well, first let me tell you, if I'd actually said that, it would have been to get on the ridiculous, okay? Yep, that was me on Anderson Cooper the other night, and just wanted to touch base on that thing again. I was asked a hypothetical question. It spun out of control, but the media did give me the time of day afterwards to explain it a little bit, and Anderson was very kind to me, but I wanted to play that clip because that's right. If I had actually said that was the defense, I should be on his ridiculous. And if you don't know what Anderson Cooper's ridiculous is, check it out. 540-0580. Zach, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl, how you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
Hold on a second, Zach. RJ, I've almost forgot about you out there at Lawrence Chevrolet.
Well, yeah, we are here at Lawrence Chevrolet, Carl, and we are having a great time because they have opened their facility. Now, they've been open all the time through remodeling, but you have to come see their brand new facility here. It is really beautiful A to Z. You're going to see the big flag flying out front, and we're celebrating with incredible deals today as well, and Rhonda Lawrence is with me. It really is a beautiful facility.
Thank you so much. We're really pleased with how everything turned out. Really tried to make it a very warm, customer-friendly environment. Great deals. Our lease payments, we have some really good leases going on for under $200.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, you know what? I've had a chance to really look around the lot. The selection is incredible, too.
We are really, really well-stocked right now, so it's a perfect time to come out and take a look.
But I really would encourage them to come by and see the new facility. It's beautiful. And it really, when it comes to service, it seems like you could come here and, the old days you used to dread waiting. Now you have Wi-Fi and TVs and everything else.
That's right, and you can check the status of your vehicle the whole time you wait on our menu board or our arrival and departure board to see where your vehicle is and check it on your smartphone and also on your computer.
So come on out, and as Rhonda said, incredible deals. The lease payments, the buy prices, everything, just tremendous. So come on out and celebrate the holiday in a new vehicle. And I'm R.J. Harris reporting from Lawrence Chevrolet on the Carlisle Pike right across from Coles. WHP, back to you, Carl.
Thanks, RJ. I'm going to stop out and look at the Tahoe myself.
Sounds good. We'll be looking for you, buddy.
All right, my friend. 540-0580. Zach, thanks for being so patient. I almost forgot about RJ out there at Lawrence Chevrolet. Bad me. All right, Zach, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing, Carl? Thanks.
Good.
Hey, I'm on the Pike, too. I might have to stop in there and see RJ.
Well, you know what? He's got some free giveaways out there, so you might as well.
Oh, yeah. You caught my attention when the guy called about being able to lock us up and then not letting us prove we're citizens or not.
Right.
I think that it's funny how we prioritize our fights in this country now, because I don't think that would be more important than sending the health care bill to the Supreme Court, don't you think?
No. Listen, here's the problem. The Supreme Court only gets involved when there's a controversy or a case, and that's constitutional. They can't just get involved until something bad actually happens under a law that Congress has passed. But the interesting question is, if the government's able to snatch me up, hold me in incognito, right, and incommunicado, and nobody knows, and nobody has access to me, and I don't have access to a lawyer or the courts, it's like it never happened. Maybe that's when somebody just disappears. And so we become like every other third world dictatorship in the history of the world.
Yes. And with it being a federal action, I mean, they could spirit us away to any state they like to.
Yeah, and listen, so in Iran, someday you come home and you're like, where's Dad? And everybody goes, I don't know, he never came home from work. And the media doesn't have access to the court system. Nobody has access. Individuals don't have access to the court system. More importantly, the individual being held has no access or right to the court system. There's no way to find out whether he fell down a well or is being held by the government. And that's what's happening here under these kinds of laws. But again, everybody trusts and loves their government. Blindly. Right.
And it's so scary. And you're right about the power. The more power we give them, the less power we'll have.
And so what does the government do? They want to keep you, as Michael Crichton once said, in a state of fear. And if anybody hasn't read Michael Crichton's book, State of Fear, go out and buy it, read it. You'll understand what global warming is really all about. But the bigger overarching understanding is the government needs you to be afraid. They need a boogeyman in the closet. They need monsters under the bed. They need you to be afraid of something and to be terrified, and it shows.
That makes us reactive instead of active.
Exactly. And then you need to go, and of course I'll just go into the nanny state, government's going to feed you breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or feed your kids breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and government's going to tell you how to think and what to do and what to buy. Pretty soon, sort of like Stalin said, it just takes a matter of time to get the people's mind wrapped around communism. You just can't call it that.
In a way, isn't that what? Because to me, I mean, I've served in the military. I own my own business. But it's almost like this whole notion of Democrat, Republican is the largest distraction against the American people.
Right. Well, that's the whole dog and pony show. Got to make it seem like we're fighting over something. And I always joke. The one thing the Republicans and Democrats can agree on, right? That there should be no third party or nobody who should be a third party candidate, and they work very hard at it. So you just like the rest of the world, where there's one party in the dictatorships. Putin's party, for instance, and they allow a few token side opposition. Well, that's the one thing the Democrats and Republicans can agree on is we'll let the Green Party be an occasional opposition. We'll let the Independent Party be an occasional opposition to make it look like there's more parties out there besides us.
Right. And my last point, Carl, I don't want to get you in trouble with your guys at Capitol Hill because you might have to do business with him shortly. But I was watching public television, and in the West, out in the western part of Pennsylvania, where the shale problems are probably more prevalent than we know here in the East, is our legislature really writing a bill that's going to give or take away the rights of municipalities to zone?
Potentially, yeah, because, listen, zoning's another funny one, too. I mean, it's people are always worried about who the Supreme Court justice is, but your local township supervisor, when they adopt a zoning code, has more power over you than pretty much anybody else in the world because they can tell you how to use your land. And if you exempt cell phone industry, for instance, got federal law to give a exemption from zoning, but they're still required to prove massive engineering studies and prove the absolute need for the tower location, etc. I don't know what we're coming out with here, but if we're coming out with something here in the state legislature, my guess is it's going to be so slanted towards the drillers as to eviscerate zoning vis-a-vis them.
Yes, and as a fisherman, and as well as a Pennsylvanian all my life, that is just so scary.
The problem is I'm all in favor, and I'm not. Got 1 minute, okay. I'm not in favor of restraining economic growth, and I think the Marcellus shale boom could be very important to long-term growth of the state. But you always do have to weigh these things out and be very careful on the environmental end, and I'm not sure everybody really knows what we're up to. Right,
and especially in the wake of what happened to the Gulf.
Yeah. All right, my friend.
Thanks a lot, Carl.
All right, thank you. Carl Rominger here. I'm going to go into break here in a second, but when I do, as you know, we do a second hour live, so if you've been listening patiently and wanting to call in, it's 540-0580. Call in with your legal questions. Of course, throughout the week, if you need a lawyer, you go to romingerlaw.com or call our office. You can email me also as well. I'm getting a pile of hate emails. Maybe I'll read a few of those to you guys when we come back. 540-0580. See you in a few minutes.